All right, well, good morning, buenos dias, bom dia, and welcome to the Space Conference of the Americas. Thank you, Major Tompkins. I'm honored to be here today, and it is not lost on me that many of you have traveled great distances to be here. The investment of your time and resources to advance the goals of this conference are commendable, and thank you for your attendance. I'm also grateful to follow the remarks of General Donovan. General Donovan, thank you to you and your team, sir, for hosting us all here in Doral. General Donovan's mission in the U.S. Southern Command Air Responsibility is supported by our efforts at U.S. Space Command, and his efforts support our mission as well. Our commands share a common vision and a close working relationship to advance U.S. national security strategy and the overall security and prosperity of the Americas and the space domain. You know, it's an exciting time for the United States and U.S. Space Command. This year, the United States is celebrating our 250th anniversary. And while our founding fathers were brilliant visionary leaders, I find it hard to believe that George Washington and Thomas Jefferson could have ever predicted the need for a warfighting command dedicated to the domain of space. There have been some incredible scientific and technological developments in that 250-year history that have led us to this point. And we continue to make history today. Recent global operations demonstrated the importance of space as a warfighting domain to the world. The Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth have both spoken openly in press conferences about U.S. Space Command and as a first mover and a critical element of recent Operation Absolute Resolve and Operation Epic Fury. I also can't help but be thrilled about Artemis II. While the Artemis missions are led by the United States Civil Space Agency, NASA, they are military supported. U.S. Space Command serves as the Department of War's designated manager for human spaceflight support, and in this role, we had the responsibility for training and providing oversight of the naval and air forces who ensured the safe recovery of the astronauts as they splashed down in the Pacific Ocean, ensuring the success of the overall mission. There is perhaps no greater modern example of the promise space holds than in this mission. Powerful images of the Artemis mission, such as these, captured the imagination of people around the world. It's the type of event that brought families together and evoked wonder and curiosity among multiple generations. We are fortunate to be operating as national space leaders at a time where there is renewed excitement for space exploration. As these missions continue to push the limits of human discovery, we have an opportunity to capture the enthusiasm of this era. In our roles as military space professionals, we carry the responsibility of educating and advocating for the vital role of space, particularly among national security and joint force decision makers. We need leaders at every echelon to understand the necessity of space and its impact on our collective ability to accomplish national missions, whether they manage civilian economic policy or military strategy. It is simply negligent to ignore the importance of space to our way of life and our national security in this day and age. So what does that education and advocacy look like? First, we need to be able to articulate the critical nature of space for our way of life. Second, we need to be able to articulate the threats that imperil our use of space and ultimately endanger that way of life. And third, we need to be able to advocate for the opportunities and promise present in space. If we are not proactive in discussing the importance of space, it can be easy to take it for granted. I doubt many national leaders watching the Artemis reentry considered the complex interplay of satellites, position, navigation, and timing, space domain awareness, and the posturing of air and naval search and recovery forces that made the mission a success. The often heavy technical emphasis within our space discussions can be intimidating to non-experts, raising the barriers to entry. However, without this understanding, it is difficult to justify a return on space investment for our nations. Last summer, I was privileged to be a keynote speaker for the South American Defense Conference, or SouthDec. Unfortunately, my plane was turned around for bad weather over Peru, and while I might have missed out on the tango and steak in Buenos Aires, I was able to deliver my remarks virtually to the chiefs of defense of most Latin American nations. In those remarks, I highlighted the vital nature of space and made the case for why each nation should come together in support of shared interests and common principles in space. The message of this domain's critical nature must permeate through our military and governmental leadership. While I recognize that I do not need to make a hard sell on why we should care about space to this audience, I do want to call upon each of us in this room to continue to advocate for the necessity of space for the well-being of our nations and the entire hemisphere. Educating key stakeholders about our domain is not complete without articulating the threat. A common understanding of the threats we face in space allows us to collectively move forward with urgency and precision. While I will briefly touch on space domain threats in my remarks this morning, I have also asked our J2 to provide a more in-depth threat brief, which you will receive later this afternoon. At U.S. Space Command, our guiding principle is clear. To secure peace, we must be well prepared for conflict in space, and if deterrence fails, we will fight and win. The international space stability that is so often taken for granted is at risk due to the deliberate and predatory actions of the Chinese Communist Party and Russia. For starters, the CCP and its military, the People's Liberation Army, have exhibited a pattern of debris-causing launches. We understand that space is difficult, and sometimes launches do produce debris. However, there is a responsibility for a country to limit debris through engineering solutions, to safeguard the domain, as well as proactively notifying other spacefaring nations through established communications channels. Perhaps it was an ironic turn of fate when one of the largest debris creators found out firsthand the damage that debris can cause. Last fall, 3 Chinese taconauts became stranded on the Chinese space station after their Shenzhou 20 spacecraft was damaged by space debris. China has since reaffirmed their effort to test and verify space debris mitigation technologies using rendezvous and proximity operations. Unfortunately, these efforts are shrouded in secrecy. The absence of images or data surrounding this technology makes us question why they would not release information on it. A satellite created for the purpose of solving a collective problem should be out of the shadows. It's no secret that the CCP leverages its state-owned commercial and academic institutions to directly support its military space activities. They do so often in direct contradiction to the agreements that allow them to operate in the host nations and gain access to strategic sites. Once embedded, Chinese operations are often shrouded in secrecy, leaving host nations unaware of what Chinese agents are doing, what data they're collecting, and how that data is being used. This lack of transparency and apparent disregard for the collective security of the domain is made worse by the predatory nature of these exploits. Take, for example, the Bolivian Tupac Katari 1, or TKSAT-1, which was financed primarily by the China Development Bank under the previous Bolivian administration. The project was executed by a PLA-linked company despite being represented as a commercial offer. Furthermore, the software of this satellite is hosted in Beijing, which means we can reasonably assume the Chinese Communist Party has persistent access to their data flows, providing a near-permanent foothold over Bolivia's satellite. Bolivia, which has fallen behind in their payments for this satellite, is now experiencing debt trap diplomacy related to this funding. These Chinese practices risk the sovereignty and security of host nations. Both the CCP and Russia are looking to build additional facilities in the Americas to improve their ability to execute operations in space, likely including data to support counterspace operations. Weapons ranging from reversible non-kinetic systems such as satellite communications jamming, GPS jamming and cyber attacks, to high-energy lasers, direct descent anti-satellite missiles, and co-orbital anti-satellite weapons put friendly satellites at risk, and they are enabled by CCP and Russian tracking stations around the globe. Most concerning of all, Russia reportedly has plans to violate the Outer Space Treaty by launching a satellite capable of carrying a nuclear weapon in space, a nuclear weapon on orbit is unconscionable. It would have indiscriminate effects, threatening all satellites regardless of owner or operator around the globe, an outcome we should not tolerate. Securing this complex domain is so essential that we at U.S. Space Command talk about three moral responsibilities we must fulfill. First, we have a moral obligation to support our nation, the U.S. Joint Force, and our allies with the space capabilities they expect they will have access to through all levels of conflict. I often say that our joint force has been sized with an assumed access to space. Space-enabled capabilities permeate each of the U.S. military services and are at the heart of our multi-domain operations. To say it plainly, our joint force cannot fight the way it is designed to fight without the space capabilities which make it far-ranging, precise, and lethal. Our second moral responsibility is to protect and defend our space constellations against the threats now arrayed against them, including non-kinetic reversible effects such as GPS jamming and kinetic non-reversible effects such as direct descent anti-satellite weapons. Our opponents have demonstrated that they can disrupt, degrade, and deny our space systems because they are aware of the vital nature of these capabilities to our militaries and to our countries. The preservation of our space capabilities is not just a commitment to our joint force, it is a commitment to our children and grandchildren that we will protect the future economic growth which will flow from rapidly expanding space services, as well as the amazing scientific and technological advancements which we will discover in space and as humanity returns to the moon to create a permanent lunar base. And then we will continue our onward push to Mars, the asteroids, and beyond. Our third moral responsibility is to help defend our homeland, the joint force, and our allies from the space-enabled attack of others. It is through space-enabled capabilities that our opponents can erode the geographic advantages of residing in the Western Hemisphere. As space-enabled capabilities are more widely distributed and are increasingly able to threaten our way of life, there is an urgency to the development of space defense and missile defense capabilities. Our opponents are developing systems like hypersonic glide vehicles in an effort to negate U.S. military advantages. They are also likely to pursue military systems launched on a fractional orbital trajectory, demonstrating the ability to strike the Americas from a southern trajectory. These moral responsibilities are what drive the members of U.S. Space Command's team every day, and we will uphold these responsibilities even as we transition to our new home on Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama, a move that will occur deliberately without any loss of capability over the next 5 years into a purpose-built headquarters facility designed for this task. However, today I want to introduce a corollary to these three moral responsibilities. We have a moral responsibility to provide space-enabled solutions to address the terrestrial threats that compromise our way of life. And there are three terrestrial threats within this hemisphere that General Donovan and his team have identified that space capabilities can help address: narco-terrorism, illegal mining, and illegal fishing. And as outlined by General Donovan, the elimination of these scourges is a top priority for Southern Command, U.S. Space Command, and the entire United States. I'm proud to say that this moral responsibility is one that many nations in this room have already sought to address. In fact, the Enhanced Domain Awareness tool is an example of this in action. The EDA tool demonstrates the power of combining multiple sensors and data sets into a common operating picture that can monitor and track illegal activities. The interplay of hemispheric security and space capabilities was evident most recently in Operation Absolute Resolve. And while I won't get into the finer points of that operation, space-enabled capabilities were full team players every step of the way, as General Donovan noted. From satellite imagery that underpin pattern-of-life analysis to the position, navigation, and timing that allowed for precision infiltration, our ability to deliver space-enabled effects minimized harm to the joint force and helped bring a narco-terrorist to justice, improving quality of life across the hemisphere. Nevertheless, there is a sobering reality to the moral responsibilities I mentioned earlier, which is that U.S. Space Command cannot succeed in upholding them alone. Most simply put, space is a team sport. Thankfully, this conference and your presence demonstrate a common understanding of the importance of allied and partner integration. Let me state clearly, we do not seek your reliance on us. We want you, our partners, to become stronger within the context of your own national sovereignty. What we ask from our teammates is to develop indigenous capabilities, but with a willingness to share the load and to integrate, because it is through integration that we are stronger together. One of the most compelling ways we can advance our collective strength is through multinational integration into our war games and exercises. Our space partnership exercise, Apollo Sentinel, involves 28 nations, including Brazil, Chile, Colombia, and Peru, plus the NATO Space Center of Excellence, and several observers here in the audience today as well: Argentina, Angola, Ecuador, Kenya, Mexico, Morocco, Nigeria, and Uruguay. And we welcome the opportunity to grow that group of partner nations. Additionally, our multinational missile defense war game, Nimble Titan, has 27 participating nations. It is through the Nimble Titan war game that we can collaborate on missile defense strategies, share insights, and develop collective responses to emerging threats. We welcome you to join us in these efforts to increase space capability and capacity, and to work interoperability issues with the United States, other participating nations, and global partners. Throughout this week, I ask that we each consider what our nation's comparative advantage is that we can each bring to this cause, because with each individual improvement, the collective ability to deliver on our moral responsibilities increases. However, the team sport of space would not be complete without acknowledging the role of commercial partners and the boundless promise they bring to our domain. I was pleased to see that one of the goals of the Space Conference of the Americas is to encourage commercial integration. And this goal is one I would like to emphasize because I have seen the power of its potential. Gone are the days in which governments have a monopoly on space innovation. The rapid speed and sheer cost of technological development, enhanced by the dual-purpose nature of the domain, ensures that commercial industry will continue to innovate and lead in the space sector. The Orion vehicle, which took Artemis beyond the moon, was a collaborative effort between NASA and many notable commercial companies, including Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and L3 Harris, just to name a few. Subsequent phases of the Artemis missions are being designed to leverage commercial partnerships even more. The human landing system, which will make a permanent lunar base a reality, will be fielded as a commercial system, supported by SpaceX and Blue Origin. And the entire Artemis program is pivoting to incorporating more commercially procured and reusable hardware. The essential nature of commercial partnerships for space superiority is also as true as it is in the civil space sector as well. In fact, improving commercial integration has been a significant effort for U.S. Space Command over the past few years. Our first commercial integration strategy was published in 2022 and revised in 2024. We have learned many lessons on how to best approach commercial integration and continue to learn each day. We have found that a clear-eyed understanding of our capability gaps and a willingness to share information on the threats we face in space are foundational to building productive commercial relationships. When industry recognizes the why behind the technological requirements, they can creatively pursue solutions or even repurpose existing off-the-shelf capabilities. Just last month, we brought together commercial partners in a first-of-kind wargame series called Apollo Insight. The purpose of this event was to fully inform commercial space partners of the requirements necessary to protect and defend our domain. Commercial space has a democratizing power. Space has never been so widely accessible and affordable as it is today. The ability to form powerful partnerships with commercial industry can jumpstart a nation's space capabilities and open new avenues for cooperation. The team sport of space includes allies, partners, commercial industry, academia, and civil agencies. With this in mind, the United States Joint Commercial Office truly embodies the team spirit. There is no question that our South American partners have played a critical role in the JCO. As you may know, the JCO 200 course is the primary avenue for training JCO operators. Brazil has qualified instructors for this course. Brazil, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador are all fully supporting JCO operations, with anticipated personnel onboarding from Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay. And thank you in advance for volunteering to have the watch in the JCO this coming 4th of July when my country officially celebrates America's 250th anniversary. Because of the work of many countries here today, the JCO has provided over 200 TAC SRT operational planning products by means of the EDA tool to partners since the program inception. These products have directly informed counter-narcotic and illegal mining efforts. Additionally, the JCO has supported security cooperation engagements with Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Uruguay. Finally, I would like to highlight and celebrate the Southcom team and its partner nations that are deploying and integrating 11 electro-optical telescopes starting this year. These telescopes will provide more space situational awareness data for the region, expanding the security of and freedom of access to space. This data will become part of the unified data library, feeding into collective efforts like the JCO Watch Floor, enabling partners from all around the globe to contribute to the safety of assets on orbit. Unlike partnering with the Chinese Communist Party, these sensors will be sovereign assets of the partner nations, with the understanding that they will provide data for the JCO and for our collective benefit. These telescopes are the result of a transparent agreement with respect for sovereignty and to bolster our shared interests. All of this to say, I stand here proud of the progress we have collectively made, but knowing there is work still to be done. Empowering each nation with training and capabilities. The unity of effort on display is critical to upholding the fundamental responsibilities we have to preserve space and subsequently our way of life. And as I conclude, I want to reiterate my thanks to each nation, agency, and command represented in this room. And thank you for traveling to be with us. Your presence speaks volumes about the promise of our domain. The collective power of space professionals from across the Americas and beyond will ensure that our nations never know a day without space. In fact, with the right advocacy and education, I am certain that the next 250 years and counting will be full of exploration and discovery, just as Artemis brought to us this month. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing the progress we collectively make this week and to engaging with many of you.